In post-industrial societies where mass production and media predominates, life is presented as an immense accumulation of spectacles. Everything that was directly experienced has been replaced with its representation in the form of images. Whereas directly lived experience is a continuum of emotion and sensation, the representational life is a stream of images detached from their living context. The original context of this directly lived reality cannot be reestablished. Living a representational life has a completely separate but unified experience unto itself that exists purely in thought. As reality is increasingly represented as images to be experienced by sight alone, eventually a completely separate pseudo world of images emerges, where the actual reality is only represented but never actually experienced, merely performed and eventually simulated. The horizon of this representational reality is the one in which individuals merely witness an image of the world in fully autonomous, non lived lives. The spectacle itself presents itself as a universal way to provide representation of directly lived reality, the so called official language of generalized separation. Additionally, it is a separate part of society that establishes common ground between cultures and focuses all attention upon its spectacular images of representational reality. The stream of images provides individuals with common points of discussion and pseudo-connection. The stream of images simultaneously connects and separates individuals. The spectacle connects individuals to itself when oriented around the same topics, and atomizes individuals into niche interest groups of one, where they become alienated from all those around them, trapped within an isolated pseudo-reality of personalized information. Ultimately, the spectacle is the official language that separates individuals from one another. The spectacle is not merely the apparatus of the media, but the relations between individuals themselves, as mediated by the stream of images that represent their daily lived experience of this pseudo reality. The spectacle is not simply an overabundance of the media and everyday lived experiences, it is an ideology that has become materialized. This ideology materialized has replaced the lived experience of reality with a lived experience of a representational pseudo reality, one accepted as objective truth. The spectacle is both the product and producer of the contemporary form of reality. It is not a supplement to or decoration of reality, but the very heart of pseudo-reality. It comes in many forms: entertainment, academic discourse, education, news, education, comma, news, comma, advertisements, comma, politics, comma, dissent, and even common sense. It is the hegemonic social culture, a model for the prevailing way of life. The spectacle self-validates its continued existence with the continual affirmation of its mode of production. Because it is continually produced, reproduced, it justifies its own creation and reaffirms its recreation. And this guarantees both its permanent presence and its monopoly on the time spent outside the contemporary production process. Social relationships are categorized into real social practice or an image of social practice. Both practices contain the spectacle, distorting these social activities to make the reproduction of the spectacle become the goal of all social activity. The language of these social activities consists of signs, of the ruling production or the indicators of the most prestigious or popular ways individuals relate to one another. The creation, recreation, and adoption of these signs is the ultimate goal of this mode of production. One cannot compare the directly lived experience of reality with the spectacle because contemporary society and spectacle are one and the same. Each side of this individuality, of this duality, is the same and yet separate. The spectacle that invades reality is materialized by the contemplation of the spectacle. Directly lived reality produces and absorbs the spectacle such that directly lived reality is no longer accessible. It creates a totality in which reality exists on both sides. Each of the two notions, seemingly fixed, is actually its transition into its opposite. Reality emerges in the spectacle, and the spectacle is reality. In the world that is really turned upside down, the moment is a moment of the false. The concept of the spectacle explains many diverse phenomena. The recognition of the spectacle's ability to explain the diversity of the phenomenon is itself part of the spectacle as it organizes and validates all social relations according to appearances. When studied by itself, the spectacle is the affirmation that all humans' relationships are merely an image of a relationship. Any sufficient and total critique of the spectacle that grasps its underlying nature reveals it as a complete negation of life that presents an appearance of life. In order to describe the spectacle, it is necessary to artificially separate and identify inseparable elements. When analyzing the spectacle, it is necessary to use the language of the spectacle and what we continue to operate within the methodological terrain of the society that is expressed by the spectacle. The spectacle is both the zeitgeist and the ultimate goal of this contemporary arrangement of social life. The spectacle is the historical period in which we are caught. The spectacle presents itself as always positive, indisputable, and inaccessible because it is always recreating and regenerating itself and is beyond dispute, generally accepted as common sense. It says nothing more than what appears is good, what is good appears. The passive acceptance it demands is already imposed by its one-way dialogue. A monopoly on the presentation of appearances, which presents reality as it is, as it must be. The fundamentally indisputable, unchanging, and frozen nature of the spectacle stems from how its means are its ends. It is the sun that never sets over the empire of modern passivity. It covers the entire surface of the world and bathes indefinitely in its own glory. The society of modern industry is not accidentally or superficially spectacular by nature, it is fundamentally spectatorist. The spectacle is the image of the ruling economy. Its goal is nothing, its development everything. It has no goal otherwise. The spectacle presents itself as an endless parade of new products, as a repeating presentation of the system's self-validating rationale, and as an economic system that outputs an increasing multitude of image objects. The spectacle is itself the leading product of contemporary society. The spectacle is able to subjugate human beings to itself because the economy is its servant, having already subjugated them. The spectacle is the forcing function for the development of the economy for its own desires. The spectacle is a faith reflection of the things produced opposed as a fictitious reflection of the objectification of the producers. The result of the Industrial Revolution was the dominance of the economy over all of social life, degrading life from the state of being to a state of having. The contemporary phase of post-industrial society has, again shifting from a state of having one to appearing. All actual having must now draw its prestige and ultimate utility from appearances. All individual reality depends on and draws its power from social reality. Individual reality is only allowed to appear to the extent that it is not actually real. When directly lived reality is replaced by a reality of representational images, the images become real in the and motivate new desires and hypnotic behaviors. Since the spectacle provides specific techniques of imagery to represent aspects of reality, directly lived reality can no longer be understood, appreciated, or even grasped. These images correspond to the human sense of sight, being the most general way for the spectacle to represent reality. The spectacle cannot be found by looking for it, nor even by listening for it. The spectacle escapes projects to evade it. Whenever there is independent representation, the spectacle is reconstituted. The spectacle is built upon the methodological traditions of Western philosophy, one that analyzes reality in the limited terms of our sense of vision and the continual development of this observation-based form of reality. Therefore, the spectacle inherits the weakness of those philosophical frameworks. As such, the spectacle transforms directly lived reality into the mere observation of reality, its image as a substitute for reality. The experience of directly lived reality has been degraded to a life of speculation. Religion is the trend in which humanity attributes power and responsibility to a source outside ourselves. Spectacular technology has not disproved or diminished this trend. It only roots the source of power as centered upon earth, recreating the misattribution of power to technology, such that even the most basic acts of daily life become abstract and alienated from directly lived reality. Philosophy, the act of thinking outside the context and the power it entails, together with its contemplation of a power that separates from humanity, prevents it from full emancipation from theology. The development of the spectacle does not project a false paradise onto the heavens, instead offering the denial of life on earth, a false material reality within ourselves, but too sacred to participate in or directly access. As long as our desires are socially dreamed pseudo-needs, dreaming will remain necessary. The spectacle is the nightmare of contemporary reality in which the only way to achieve our dreams is to remain asleep. The spectacle is the Ambien that maintains that sleep. Those in positions of practical power within the contemporary society have detached themselves from directly lived reality in order to focus on building practical power in the new empire of the spectacle. This can be explained by their continued lack of cohesion and contradictions inherent in the exercise of that power. The oldest social specialization is that of an individual in control of power. The specialization is that root of the spectacle and acts as the representative and decision maker for all other activities in society. It has banned all other acts of expression unless it presents by the spectacle. The most modern specialization is simultaneously the most ancient. The spectacle is a self-congratulatory monologue with itself describing its own totalitarian management of the very conditions of existence. The seemingly objective relationships between television, radio, advertisements, and social media networks to the individuals who consume that media conceal the fact that these are relationships between people but appear as relationships between classes. Humanity continually destroys our irrational yet actually existing relationships and replaces them with a synthetic copy, a poor model, built upon the same deadly irrationalities as before. The spectacle is not a natural or inevitable result of technological determinism, or on the contrary. The spectacle is a configuration of society that develops technology for its own sake, limiting the consideration of the spectacle of its most apparent and superficial manifestation of the mass media. It would seem to be imposed upon society as a mere technical apparatus. It must be understood that this apparatus is not neutral, and that its development has progressed with respect to the demands of the spectacle. If the social relationships of the contemporary times can only be facilitated by the mediation of the instantaneous communication technologies, then the administration of these technologies becomes a form of power. As such, this communication is a unilateral, one-way dialogue. The continual consolidation and accumulation of these technologies results as the accumulation of power.